Sarcasm. The Latin sarcasmus, which stems from the Greek word, literally means to bite the lips in rage. Sarcasm refers to a humor that is at once cutting and bold in both in a mocking fashion. Sarcasm is not, however, always blatantly expressed and can be and commonly is conveyed in an exaggerated intonation of one's voice when speaking, as to over-accentuate and draw attention to what is being mocked or made humorous. For example, if one person in a couple is served an enormous plate of food at a restaurant, his or her companion might remark to the other, "Well, that should feed the 7 of us." The person's remark is mocking the large portion of food by being both facetious and ironic, since the plate is obviously intended to feed one person, not 7, though it may in fact be big enough for more than one, and the couple would understand that the remark being made for that same reason expresses an untruth of what the situation is. 2 people have a meal, not 7. The remark is obviously making fun of the large portion of food, and thus would be considered a sarcastic comment. Many forms of sarcasm can be so dependent on the tone of one's voice, so using sarcasm in writing can be much harder to pick up on the page than it is in dialogue. This did not stop writers like Mark Twain and Jane Austen, to name a few, from creating a reputation along with many masterworks hinged on the appreciation of sarcasm through the art of the satirical novel. Throughout much of history, sarcasm was considered a lower form of wit because it was considered so unabashedly disrespectful to the person or object being described. In the 19th century, famous Scottish historian and essayist Thomas Carlyle once remarked that sarcasm is the language of the devil, for which reason I have long since so good as denounced it. Over the years, and certainly today, sarcasm has become a commonly welcomed and appreciated form of humor. There is a bit of confusion over what is ironic and what is sarcastic. The two ideas can be easily confused, but there is, however, a very distinct difference between what is ironic and what is sarcastic. Sarcasm would never be described as gentle or endearing, but rather as caustic and bitter, describing situations, persons, or things in a derogatory way in order to be funny. Writers use sarcasm to criticize everything from religion and government to philosophers and other writers. The 14th century English author and poet Geoffrey Chaucer speaks of a character in the Canterbury Tales as a wanton and merry person who seduces women and accepts bribes. This is a sarcastic criticism of the clergy, who had become very corrupt. The stylistic function of sarcasm in literature can be the following. It adds adornment, variation, embellishment, embroidery, emphasis, exaggeration, exclamation, flourish, floweriness, irony, lushness, and luxuriance to the English language. A fair amount of confusion has surrounded the issue regarding the relationship between verbal irony and sarcasm. The latter is frequently misused as a synonym for irony. Irony refers, however, to the literal meaning and the intended meaning of the words uttered being different, while sarcasm refers to the mocking intent of the utterance. It is possible to be ironic without being sarcastic, or to be sarcastic without being ironic. The most vivid difference probably is ridicule. Ridicule is an important aspect of sarcasm, but not verbal irony in general. By this account, sarcasm is a particular kind of personal criticism leveled against a person or group of persons that incorporates verbal irony. For example, a person reports to her friend that rather than going to a medical doctor to treat her ovarian cancer, she has decided to see a spiritual healer instead. In response, her friend says sarcastically, Great idea. I hear they do fine work. And the friend could have also replied with a number of ironic expressions that should not be labeled as sarcasm exactly. Sarcasm is also regularly confused with cynicism, which in common use is seen as a fundamental nihilistic attitude toward other people and life in general. The term is frequently misused as a synonym for irony. And now about situational irony. Situational irony is when the outcome of a situation is inconsistent with what we expect would logically or normally occur, when the result of an action is contrary to the desired or expected effect. An example of situational irony would be if a thief's house was broken into at the same time he was robbing someone's house, or if a man is laughing at the misfortune of another man even while the same misfortune is happening to him. Situational irony is most common type of irony in films. A key attribute of situational irony, most commonly referred to as a surprise ending, is diversion from the expected outcome to the actual outcome of a movie. In literature, situational irony occurs when a reader or character expects one thing to happen, but something entirely different happens. Writers use situational irony to make their stories interesting or humorous, and sometimes to force their readers to re-examine their own thoughts and values. Situational irony is closely connected with so-called irony of fate, or cosmic irony.